Let's pick a song and sing a yellow nectarine. Take a bath, I'll drink the water that you made. If you should die before me, ask if you can bring a friend. Pick a flower, hold your breath and drift away. Chris Cornell, the next day, let us pray. Dear Lord, thank you for all that we have, by your grace, of course. Forgive us our sins. We acknowledge your Son, Jesus Christ. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Okay, an interesting little article was sent to me, which led me on to another article and another thought. And I have a little comment from last year that was made by someone to share with you. Let's take a look.
Your device is running critically low on memory. Please run device maintenance to continue.
Wow. That was interesting. That tells you how many pictures and shots regarding this case I have in my phone, huh? Anyway, attorney for Chris Cornell's doctor comments on family's lawsuit. This is from November 3rd. And this is what led me to the next couple points I'm going to make. Dr. Koblen's attorney states the prescriptions given to Cornell were appropriate. The Soundgarden and Audioslave frontman, excuse me. It's one of those sites that has a lot of ads that just pop up out of nowhere, so forgive me. Start that again. One moment while it loads. An attorney for Chris Cornell's doctor has responded to the Cornell family's lawsuit over the singer's death last May. The Soundgarden Audioslave frontman died May 17, 2017, at age 52. His death was later confirmed as a suicide by hanging. Actually, when you search it online, he died May 18, technically, not May 17. However, 2 days later, Cornell's wife, Vicki Cornell, began disputing the idea that Cornell took his own life. A full statement was released at the time, and now Cornell's family is filing a lawsuit against the doctor who they claim was overprescribing medication to the singer, which eventually caused his death. I don't agree with the 2 days later thing. Cornell died technically on the 18th, in my opinion, and then there was the phone call to the insurance lawyer that day on the 18th, and then they had to get their ducks in a row on the 18th, which is the same day he died, in my opinion. In the lawsuit, Vicki claims that Dr. Koblen prescribed 940 doses of the anti-anxiety drug lorazepam, aka Ativan, as well as oxycodone during the last 20 months of her husband's life, without properly examining him. When responding to the claims, Koblen's attorney stated the prescriptions were appropriate. Dr. Koblen is a competent and conscientious doctor who enjoyed an excellent physician-patient relationship with Mr. Cornell and other members of his family, James Carr said in a statement. The experts I have consulted with believe Dr. Koblen's treatment was within the standard of care in this community and were not a substantial factor in causing Mr. Cornell to commit suicide. And the medical examiner agrees that the drugs were not a substantial factor in Cornell committing suicide. It was the rope around his neck, according to the expert medical opinion of Dr. Brown, who did the autopsy. Now, this whole 2 days thing kind of stuck in my head. I know this is a technicality, But it brings me to another point. I disagree. It wasn't 2 days later. It was the next day. Because the 18th, the day he actually died, they had to get their ducks in a row, like I said. Now, I went back to the Rolling Stone article that I bring up all the time that came out May 19, the next day after Cornell's death. That had statements from Vicky and the lawyer, the insurance lawyer, Kirk Pasick. They were very quick off the mark, wouldn't you say? Like I said before, it kind of hints at foreknowledge of an event. Just the fact that the statement exists from and has statements from Vicky and the insurance lawyer. And we're going to look at this again. And this is what it looks like. May 19, 2017. Chris Cornell's wife issues statement, blames anxiety medicine for suicide. The next day, she blames the medicine. Vicky Karayanis, the wife of Soundgarden singer Chris Cornell, issued a statement Friday morning where she remembered her late husband, who died Thursday morning at the age of 52, and speculated whether his suicide was the result of taking too much of his anxiety medication. Speculated, right? As if they didn't have this narrative already thought up. Allegedly, of course. And according to Rolling Stone, he died Thursday and the statement came out Friday. That's the point I'm making here. It was the next bloody day. Not 2 days later. It was the next day. Chris's death is a loss that escapes words and has created an emptiness in my heart that will never be filled. Yeah, that's why you're with Georgie less than a year later, right? As everyone who knew him commented, Chris was a devoted father and husband. He was my best friend, Vicky wrote. Yeah, that's why you guys were separated the last part of the relationship, right? Allegedly, of course. His world revolved around his family first and, of course, his music second. He flew home for Mother's Day to spend time with our family. Boy, remember how they always used to throw that out there? The Mother's Day time they spent. That proves the relationship was good, right? Get the fuck out of here. He flew out midday Wednesday, the day of the show, after spending time with the children. When we spoke before the show, we discussed plans for a vacation over Memorial Day and other things we wanted to do. Yeah, okay. However, following Soundgarden's concert Wednesday night, Vicky noticed a change in her husband's demeanor when they talked on the phone after the show. When we spoke after the show, I noticed he was slurring his words. He was different. When he told me he may have taken an extra Ativan or two, I contacted security and asked if they check on him, she continued. What happened is inexplicable, and I am hopeful that further medical reports will provide additional details. Yeah, we all know what you were hoping for in the medical reports or the toxicology, right? I know that he loved our children, and he would not hurt them by intentionally taking his own life. We know that too. We know that's how we know. You had him off. That's one of the ways, and that's allegedly, of course. And notice I contacted security. They were utterly loath to mention Martin Kirsten's name back in the beginning of this. Wasn't until about a year later they started mentioning his name, throwing him under the bus, saying he had this great relationship with Peter and Amy, and it was all Amy's idea to hire him. Yeah, okay, we believe that. Why did it take a year later, or why did it take a year for that info to come out of your lying mouths? An attorney for the Cornell family, Kirk Pasick, that's insurance attorney Kirk Pasick, they neglected to mention that in this article, reiterated Vicky's belief that an extra dosage of Ativan, an anxiety medication often employed by recovering addicts, altered Chris Cornell's mental faculties after the Detroit show. Pasick added that the Cornell family is disturbed at inferences that Chris knowingly and intentionally took his life. I want to read this part again because I forgot about this. Extra dosage of Ativan, an anxiety medication often employed by recovering addicts. That's interesting that her lawyer, her insurance attorney, says this because she has said so many times how wrong it was that Chris was giving this medication. Well, according to your own insurance lawyer, it's a medication often employed by recovering addicts. Sounds like the doctor, Dr. Koblin, was right in line with what is often employed by recovering addicts. Without the results of the toxicology tests, we do not know what was going on with Chris, or if any substances contributed to his demise, Pasek said. Well, we did get the results of the toxicology, and the results were the drugs had nothing to do with it, and the levels were very low, within therapeutic range. So there goes that hope that you shysters had. Chris, a recovering addict, had a prescription for Ativan and may have taken more Ativan than recommended dosages. The family believes that if Chris took his life, he did not know what he was doing, and that drugs or other substances may have affected his actions. Well, we do know that Chris probably took one extra pill. On the bottle it says take one, not two. But again, there were also other drugs in his system. So you can't just point to Ativan and say, it's all the Ativan's fault. Never mind these other drugs that were in his system. Even though all the levels were low anyway, and the drugs played no part in his death, honestly, we all know that. Pasek added that side effects of Ativan include paranoid or suicidal thoughts, slurred speech, and impaired judgment. That's only proven at certain levels of Ativan, which Chris was under. We talked about that way back in the beginning of this endeavor. Vicki Cornell noted her husband's slurred speech following the Detroit concert in her statement. She added, the outpouring of love and support from his fans, friends, and family means so much more to us than anyone can know. Thank you for that and for understanding how difficult this is for us. Hours after Cornell's death at a Detroit hotel, a medical examiner's report confirmed that the singer had died by suicide. And remember, this Rolling Stone article and this statement was given the next day with quotes from Vicki and her lawyer. I know I've said that a million times. I'm going to keep saying it. There's more evidence, as well as Pasek's own word, that he was one of the first phone calls that she made to an insurance attorney minutes after Cornell's death. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to get these statements together. So you know what she was doing the whole day of the 18th, getting her ducks in a row with her insurance attorney. What are we going to say? What's our statement going to look like? They already knew. Because it's obvious to me, when you give a statement that soon, the next day, with quotes from your lawyer, to me, I mean, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, that implies foreknowledge of an event. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. And always remember that lawyer wasn't or is an insurance lawyer. There's something else. Someone sent me a link to a Reddit page. This is a thread that someone started right after Cornell's death. And I looked at some of the comments. And one of the comments stood out to me. This comment was made on May 27, 2017. That was the day after Cornell's funeral. You know, the funeral where there was no body because they cremated Cornell's body before the funeral. Yeah, that's standard, right? Anyway, here's the comment. And no, I'm not going to read the name. I have a stupid theory that I imagined up. This is only based on what I've read, an overactive imagination, and lack of sleep, so shoot holes all through it. The problem is, you're not going to be able to shoot holes through this theory. This would be a crazy murder theory, but it's just that. It's just to show how a crime like this maybe could work. Anyway, here goes. Victim plays show which finishes at 11:30. Heads back to hotel with suspect. Police reports say they were together and headed to the victim's room, where suspect reportedly fixed unsure what something on the victim's computer and gave him 2 Ativan. Again, so we are told, may have been more. In other words, suspect gets to be alone with Chris Cornell in his hotel room to fix a computer and give him a couple pills, right? The fix a computer part is a great excuse for the suspect to be in the room long enough to do what he needs to do. Anyway, there's more. Here's where it gets crazy. Not crazy at all. As I have no idea how long the suspect was in the room for. None of us have any idea. Because that question was never asked by Weaver or the police officer that took the initial report. All we get is, oh, I was back in my room and I got a call from Chris around 11:35 or something like that, which is bullshit. Never asked, how long were you in the room for, Mr. Kirsten? That question was never asked. How many times have I brought that up? I'm going to read that again. Here's where it gets crazy, as I have no idea how long the suspect was in the room for. I theorized that as the victim was starting to relax and get groggy with the Ativan, the suspect used a red exercise band to strangle the victim until he passed. Here, he brought the victim to the bathroom and shut the door, took the victim's phone, left the room, and went the short distance to his room. Here, he either called the victim's wife using the victim's phone, or she called him on the victim's phone. Does this sound familiar? I believe that this call was to see if the crime had taken place. Then after a short period of time, the victim's wife calls the suspect to ask him to check on the victims, knowing he is already dead. Does this sound familiar? Suspect goes to victim's room, kicks bathroom door in, and finds victim, replaces victim's phone. Police called, etc. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is there was never a call between victim and wife. It was between victim's wife and suspect on victim's phone after the fact. In this imaginary situation, the suspect gave the victim enough Ativan to make him drowsy, choked him with an exercise band while he was passed out, which is what Ativan is basically for, to sedate you, dragged victim to the bathroom, took phone, and left. In this imaginary situation, this would have been concocted between the victim's wife and the suspect prior to the night it happened. Alibis for them both are covered. The suspect left the room. Saw on CCTV. The phone call between victim and wife happened. At least a call between their phones did. Obviously, this can easily be shot down if more information was released. No, it can't be shot down. Like, was the bathroom door definitely locked? Even that information doesn't shoot it down, because who are you trusting to give us that info? The suspect. Was anyone with the suspect when he broke into the room? We now know no one was with the suspect when he broke into the room. We know that. So there's that missing information this person was looking for. And man, this is a brilliant person right here. He had this theory worked out on the 27th. I kind of figured it went kind of like that too. And I've been saying it for a long time, and I know I've never seen this guy's comment till now. I've been saying the same thing. Probably came at Chris from behind while he was groggy, tired from a show with the exercise band. You don't want to strangle him with your hands, because a good medical examiner can tell if it's strangulation by hand or not. So you strangle Chris with the implement you're going to hang him with in a few minutes. Make it look like he killed himself. And not only would Chris have been groggy from Ativan, he would have been tired from performing on stage for a couple hours. He would have been in no position to fight off anyone. And the suspect was a stronger man than Chris Cornell physically. Has training with all kind of weapons, knows how to kill a motherfucker quickly and effectively. Has experience on the battlefield. was hired less than a year before, was the last person to see Chris alive, was alone with Chris in the room, the only one in the room, the only one there to find the body, the only one there to give us the state of the doors, where they locked, unlocked, blah, 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 blah. In other words, since he's a suspect, we can't believe a fucking word he says. As to the state of the first entry door, the bathroom door, nothing. So who knows if the doors were really locked or not? And he called security several times before he kicked in that door. Why do I think he did that? Because he was afraid to be the one to find the body. He didn't want to walk in there alone. Which reminds me of the Kurt Cobain case. Courtney didn't want to be the one to find the body. She started making phone calls to private investigators. Yeah, come on in my house. Take a look around. Look at everything. Go all over the property. I believe it was the same thing, and this commenter brilliantly stated it. I personally think there was a little hesitation on Kirsten's part. Like, I don't want to walk in this room alone and be the one to find the body of the guy I fucking just killed minutes earlier. Allegedly, of course. Remember, everything I say is theory as well, just like this guy's comment. I've talked about many times how all there needed to be was record of a phone call for us sheep out there to think a phone call between Chris and Vicky really even took place. Martin could have easily taken the phone back to his room, made the call, or let Vicky call the phone, just like the commenter said. Now you got record of a phone call. You got the wife in another location. She makes up a fucking fictional conversation. We're never going to get the actual text of what was said in these phone calls, but there's a record of the calls. As far as the IT guy call, that could have been done as well. There could be record of that somewhere, but I doubt it. But all Martin would have had to do is, since he's got Chris's phone, place a call to his own phone. Oh, Chris was asking for an IT guy to come fix his Apple TV after I was already in the room earlier to help him fix the computer. I think they used that excuse one too many times that evening. All kind of computer issues. TV issues. Excuse used one too many times. In other words, both phone calls could have been faked. I've said all this a million times. I was just fascinated that this person basically put forth the same exact theory that I've been putting forth. In other words, it ain't so crazy a theory, is it? Could have easily went down that way. What are the reasons for to make up a conversation between Vicky and Chris and to make up an IT call? What are the reasons for that? Why would they do that? To make us think Chris was still alive when Kirsten left the room the first time. That's another thing I've been saying for a long time. I don't think Chris was alive after Kirsten walked out of that room. And no hotel employees' information can help us with that. No camera footage can help us with that. Because no one was in the room with Chris and Kirsten. They were alone. Only they know what happened in that room, and one of the parties is deceased now. Then there's the question, oh well, could they triangulate the phone calls and see where the phone calls actually took place? They can triangulate the phone calls to a certain point, but if you got a room 2 doors down away from Chris, or 5 doors down, or 10 doors down, they can't triangulate it to that degree. And Kirsten would know that. The average person would know that. So there'd be no way to show where the phone actually was It'd still be in the general location it needed to be. For them to say, yeah, Chris made that call, or Chris, took part in that conversation. But they never even went that far anyway, to try and triangulate phone calls, check phone records. They didn't do any of that. They handed the phone and laptop right back to Kirsten to give to Vicky. Or they gave it right back to Vicky herself. They didn't check shit. They didn't even send test samples in. Remember the hand swabs of Martin, Kirsten, stuff like that? They didn't even send that shit in. So honestly, when you really think about it, they didn't even need the records of the phone calls. But for the story, for us sheep out here, to make it seem legitimate and plausible, that's what they needed the phone records for, just in case. Just in case someone checked it out. And I've mentioned many times, you got them on both ends of the narrative. You got Kirsten on one end of the narrative, you got Vicky on the other. They control the whole situation. They control every bit of information that comes out. Why? Because Chris is dead. So if there was a plan to do something to Chris that night, you've got the suspect's word and the other suspect's word. And that's all you have. You got nothing else. And all possible evidence was either given right back to Vicky, or test samples weren't sent in. So this guy's theory, which is basically exactly the same as my theory, is very possible, very plausible. And I commend this person for seeing how the crime could have easily been committed. And like he said in his comment, she already knew the body. She already knew Chris was dead, when she made that phone call. For security to go kick the door in. And I truly think the reason Martin called security twice, even though he was told to kick the door in by Vicky, he had a little bit of fear in his heart. He's like, I don't want to find the body alone. I want there to be other people there with me when I find the body. Because I already know he's dead, because I'm the one that fucking did it. Just a little fear, a little hesitation. He wanted witnesses. He couldn't get it. Eventually, he had to go in alone and be the only one to find the body. And then he was alone with the body for like about a half hour, 40 minutes. Anyway, I was just fascinated by what this guy said, because it's exactly what I've been saying. Same exact theory. Allegedly, of course. Peace be ever with thee.